Time flows quietly along tree-lined paths. European-style buildings preserve stories from the past. Tram bells awaken memories of a bygone era in the city. A group of volunteers searches for the stories of the past. A bridge reopens. A unique cultural space is revealed. This is a different view of the water. Dazzling colors decorate the city. For years, the water of the High River is what makes Tianjin a poetic and dynamic city of beautiful landscapes. At this steel bridge, people wait with anticipation in the darkness. They and the bridge are waiting for a special moment.
开启桥梁准备，35度，开启。
87 years ago, this scene causes a sensation. It's the first time this great bridge opens to allow ships to pass. In China, there are few bridges that open like this. In the past, this bridge was the only one in China designed with the world's most advanced opening system.
挺好，你看，到时候回去选吧。
今天是第一次看，等了2、3个小时了都，就盼着这一刻。
It's once known as the International Bridge. Its present and past are part of a revolution which began 150 years ago. The Drum Tower is no longer the highest building in Tianjin. It's the former center of the city. In the past, the old town covered an area of less than 2 square kilometers. Almost half of the well-known personalities lived in the north and east, while ordinary people lived in the south and west. The peace and tranquility disappear as foreign troops invade in 1860. Tianjin then opens to the outside world, and a new city begins to develop outside the old town area. Today's North Jiufang Road is the boundary between the British and French concessions in 1861. Together with its cross streets, the central avenue helps divide the area into 35 building lots. This is the prototype of the British concession, designed by British Army Lieutenant Charles George Gordon. Such city planning concepts from Europe are completely different from the square layout in other parts of Tianjin. In 1878, Gustav von Dietring, the former commissioner of Tianjin Customs, is elected chairman of the Municipal Council of the British concession. Dietring is not familiar with city planning, but turns Gordon's design into reality. He builds the first city hall in the concessions. The city hall is named Gordon Hall. In the eyes of Dietring, this symbolizes the glory and ambition of the empire on which the sun never sets. As the British flag is raised, construction on the adjacent French concession quickly begins. In the French concession, the Scandinavian-style building, built in 1922, is the former home of Zhang Ruiting, a renowned businessman in Tianjin. The semicircular parlor and fine decorative patterns on the glazed windows still retain their beauty. It's said that these colored windows are made in Europe and require 3 months to reach Tianjin. Nowadays, such glass is rarely seen, even in Europe. Among the fancy foreign goods merchant ships bring are various kinds of building materials. These imported components are of the highest standard in Europe. The facilities in the foreign concessions in Tianjin are planned in accordance with the prevailing standards in Britain.
Geography between
Dana Arnold does research into architecture and urban planning. She sees Tianjin as an astonishing city among all those she has visited around the world.
And here I want to... Well, first of all, if anything, the British concession is better organised than London. I've written 3 books on London, on the urban planning of London and the parks and gardens and specific building types in the 19th century. And in each, what comes out is all the sort of grand ideas and failed plans in London. Whereas in Tianjin, it's quite different. There is a regular street plan. There does seem to be some logic to the urban fabric, which you certainly don't find in London.
The well-organized planning, however, ignores the adjacent concessions that will soon be created. This leads to defects at road junctions. The design uses arc-shaped walls, and the roads must be built in accordance. Imported methods of city planning are brand new to the Chinese. On weekends, Han Chunjing takes a trip through the streets and alleys of the city with a team of volunteers from Memory of Tianjin. They're from various professions and backgrounds and view the old buildings from different perspectives. They're called Memory of Tianjin because they record changes of each era in the city with cameras and seek out the old stories of the city. They discover the former concessions of the 9 countries are located along the river, and each one, big or small, is well laid out and in good order. More than 100 years ago, Western city design models are transplanted to Tianjin. The changes are not only above the ground, but also underground, where an unseen and mysterious world exists. Zheng Dexiang supervises the maintenance of the water supply system in this city. After 31 years, he's familiar with everything. This spot is the former Japanese concession. Many of the underground pipes are more than a century old.
您看看，这个位置啊，这一下就没嘛事儿了。它不是漏的多厉害，尽量就是有点硬啊。
我这住60多年，这没摸没碰过它。
所以您看呢，咱这个大户大楼那么多住户，家家那块没有您这保持的好。咱天津市住的很少了，现在。
People are used to getting water just by turning on a tap. But the situation is much different a century ago. In the street of ancient culture sits a temple. Inside there is a special statue of a god worshipped by all. The people in Tianjin call him Water Bearer Brother. In the past, the water bearers collect water from the river outside the city every day. As time passes, they will come to be worthy of the utmost respect. In the last years of the 19th century, the Water Bearer Brothers will encounter serious competition. In 1895, Qing endures a sleepless night as a plague spreads in Tianjin. There is a danger of the water supply becoming contaminated. Once the water is tainted, the British concession along the lower reaches of the river will face a serious problem to contain the outbreak. London has a complete urban sewerage system that's created in response to a plague in the city. Qing decides to replicate this in the British concession. Three years later, the first water treatment plant in Tianjin opens in the British concession. This is only the third such facility in China. The others are in Shanghai and Lushun. In 1902, the plant goes into operation, providing the city with tap water for the first time. The Southern Canal acts as the water source. The company begins to supply the surrounding area. The clean water and easy access delight residents of the concessions. In the old town, however, things are different.
刚开始自来水厂生产的水以后，老百姓并不认识，他认为是机器加工的水，不如自己挑来水自己处理的这个安全。所以他就不认可。同时呢，当时社会上呢也流传着一种谣言，就是说呢，喝这样机器加工来的自来水呢，当时的妇女不生孩子。所以正因为有这种担心，有这种疑虑，所以呢，老百姓不敢喝自来水。
A process is launched to help popularize tap water in Tianjin. Advertising, free tastings, gift water tickets. All in all, it is designed to convince ordinary people to accept tap water.
当初他们有一张照片，就是在他年会的所有职工前头都是国外的孩子，来告诫老百姓，社会上传言喝这种自来水不生孩子，那你看看我们的孩子不是很健康的成长吗？用这种方式向广大的市民进行宣传。一段时间以后，老百姓逐渐的就接受了。
In the early days, there are water shops in the streets of Tianjin. They sell boiled water from the river. With the introduction of water pipes, hundreds of water shops change over to the new source. This also helps promote the use of tap water among the people. Once the quality of the drinking water is guaranteed, the next issue is sewage disposal. Sewage pipes are first laid in the British concession in the early 20th century. The open trenches for sewage disposal are replaced by underground pipes. From then on, the sewer system starts to extend everywhere, like a spider's web. As a drainage system administrator, Zhang Yongchang examines waste pipes every day. 43 pipelines are beneath the 5 Avenues district. The system is almost as long as the standard distance of an international marathon. The near-century-old pipes still play an important role. They are mainly reinforced concrete, and their unique design is imaginative. The pipes are from the end of the 19th century. They are wide at the top and narrow at the bottom. This speeds the flow of wastewater through them to carry away all the impurities. This mysterious underground world contains a very efficient drainage system. The Tianjin Municipal Drainage Administration Office preserves maps of 77 sewer pipelines under 24 roads in the British and French concessions. Underground secrets are revealed one by one.
对，一个路口一个井。它等于就直接接河里。对，下雨时呢，它只能收集雨水进支管了，杂质呢就留在雨水井里头。所以说这个干管就干净。再一个就是污水管，它这里呢。
To Zheng Yongchang, every detail of these drawings, from design to layout, is precisely examined and measured. In July of 2012, an extraordinary rainstorm hits Tianjin and Beijing, causing flooding. The Five Avenues district remains largely unaffected. The old drainage system withstands another test. Water is the lifeline of a city. Construction of the water supply and drainage system in Tianjin drives development and expansion in the city. Before it opens as a commercial port, the population of the city is no more than 200,000. However, by the year 1936, the population is 1.25 million, a six-fold increase. Dai Xiaochen is a member of Memory of Tianjin. He's searching for information about the walls of the old city. Together with his companion, he comes to an alley that is once part of the British concession.
你看这砖的厚度，要比上面砖的厚度要厚一块，是这样很明显。对，再有看这个砖，这砖的宽度，比这砖的宽度要窄，因为这是一钉一顺，这样砌起来的墙就比较结实。这样是如果要不是这个水泥剥落下来，咱们根本也看不见了。
The city wall of Tianjin disappears a century ago. Many of its old bricks are reused in the concessions to build houses. These days it's difficult to find bricks from the old city wall. Tianjin is the first city in China to remove its city walls. In 1900, shortly after the troops of 8 Allied powers take over, the city walls are replaced by 4 straight boulevards. 5 years later, rails are placed in the streets for tram cars, which represent the pinnacle of European industrial civilization. Ko Yongqing is a lifelong fan of models. His craft teacher specializes in making models of ancient ships. Models of various sizes are on display around the room. However, Ko isn't here for the sake of his model ships.
听师傅讲，他小时候坐电车的事儿。电车一来了，大人小孩一块儿上，然后上不去的小孩呢，在后面一块儿跟着追着跑，走起来呢还叮当叮当响。哎，我感觉这个挺有意思的。后来我就跟师傅讲，我说咱们可不可以一块儿咱做一个？
In the opinion of Chu Mingqi, making a small model tram car is no less difficult than constructing a model ship.
做这个车呢，虽说个儿不大嘛，但是也挺复杂的，因为要做的仿真，所以就得用心去做，挺有意思的，把小时候的事儿都想起来了。
4 days later, the master and apprentice complete the tram car model. It looks exactly the same as the old tram cars of 100 years ago. In 1906, tram cars are a common sight in the streets of Tianjin. People are both curious and uneasy as they see them speeding along. Pedestrians worry the rushing tram cars may hit them. Merchants think the tram cars shuttling back and forth will influence their business. Rickshaw pullers fear they face formidable competition and worry they'll be put out of business by a faster form of transportation. Everyone is against the tram cars. The archives of Tianjin preserve an official notice about the tramcars from 1905.
100多年前的告示，当时贴在商会门口。这告示呢，就指出了电车的行驶路线，就是绕城一周。这电车运行以后，并不影响老百姓的生活和生意，并且呢，对商民进行了这个告诫，叫不轻信谣言，不招摇滋事。如果有违法的呢，要进行严惩。这口气是比较严厉的。同时呢，想用这个告诫商民接受有轨电车这个新事物。
The public notice fails to dispel people's doubts or fear. To change the perception and drum up business, tramcar companies hire bands and wave colored flags to advertise. The people of Tianjin begin to try out the new machines. The convenience and speed give people an unprecedented experience. A year after the introduction of tramcars in Tianjin, they begin to be seen in other cities, including Shanghai and Beijing. Tianjin has the cheapest tramcar tickets, though, and therefore the most passengers. Tramcars become the most popular means of public transport in Tianjin. The tramcars rumble through the city, linking the old district and the concessions. The high-speed service means that places once considered to be far away are easier to reach. The tramcars energize the city. Business centers appear at the intersections of the 6 routes and are distinguished by different colors. Such a layout remains in place today. In 2006, the tramcars again begin to roll along the streets of Tianjin, a full 100 years after they are introduced for the first time. In the past few years, the reintroduction of tramcars continues to rise in Europe. Paris is beginning to reopen its tramcar routes. Environmental protection is reviving an old form of public transport. Bridges connect the two halves of the city just as tramcars are used to link the various districts. There are 6 movable bridges in the city of Tianjin, making it a city with the greatest number of movable bridges in the country. It takes 3 years to build the International Bridge. This is the last movable bridge and the most expensive one over the river. 17 companies from around the world bid on the contract, putting forward over 31 designs. An American company wins the bidding war, and a French company is hired for the actual construction. Once in operation, the bridge opens 4 times a day to allow merchant ships from various nations to sail along the river. The rest of the day it remains closed for people and vehicles to cross. The International Bridge becomes the busiest traffic hub in Tianjin. The bridge mechanism goes out of use in 1972 after years of neglect and lack of maintenance. "49-year-old Han Jinyang has a hand in the design of more than 100 bridges. However, the bridge he likes the most is the International Bridge, built some 87 years ago.
这个桥的这种开启体系啊，非常非常复杂，它是一种活动轴的开启体系。刚才看见了吗？这个是一个大的弧形的梁，然后这是一个齿座梁。开启的时候啊，合成一个大齿轮，但是上头又有好多小齿轮，整个这套系统就像那个手表一样，大齿轮套小齿轮互相带的。而且呢，这个桥有2套开启系统。 一套是用人开启，一套是电的开启系统。当时电力如果不行的话，就用人工开启。看到边上那个4个小链条，那头4个，这头4个，就是8个链条，一面站8个人，16个人就可以把这个桥拽起来。这是活动化。
Han Zhenhuang's task is to restore this bridge.
这个开启过程开启了，看这个开启过程，看看当时海河上为什么要做开启桥？这个角度几乎是90度，大船带着桅杆这些都不用影响，否则的话，这么大的轮船进不了海河这个航道里头来。应该说当时这个设计理念很先进。
The technology used in the bridge is superb. A lack of materials that date back to the time of its construction leaves Han with no choice but to start from square one. It takes him 2 years just to examine the bridge. The center of mass of the open bridge is the biggest challenge facing Han Zhenhuang and his team.
找这个重心的时候呢，很麻烦。我们都是在板上进行，用不同的测试方法，开启一个角度测一次，开启一个角度测一次，找出它的重心的一个轨迹，然后跟那个轴的这个重心，再和后头的压重块的重心，在一个直线上的时候，给它一点点的力，它就自动能够开启。这是这个桥的关键。
Han Zhenhuang feels a sense of awe as he looks at this bridge. He cannot imagine how engineers 100 years ago can complete this project in an age of scarce resources. The international bridge also gives Fang Bo a feeling of awe. Fang is a volunteer with the local history team. He visits the bridge many times, photographing the changes. He also seeks details about the bridge in historic documents and other literature.
在天津的民间一直流传着一种说法，说万国桥的设计师是埃菲尔，可能是老百姓从万国桥的外观上觉得和这个埃菲尔铁塔很像，所以就想当然的有了这么一个认识。不过从万国桥建成第2天的报道中，我们就能查到，当时对桥梁的设计师有明文的记载，他的名字叫法国工学博士白璧。这些老报纸为我们多年来对万国桥的一个疑问找出了答案。
Perhaps in the eyes of visitors, the International Bridge does look a bit like the Eiffel Tower. In November of 2006, the bridge reopens after 3 years of restoration. Fang Bo and the people of Tianjin witness its rebirth, as well as the start of a new era in history. On this map of the concessions, the district adjacent to the International Bridge can be seen to be the former Italian concession. It's 10 o'clock in the morning, and the dessert shop is open for business. Marilu begins another busy day. This Italian girl comes to Tianjin 6 years ago and falls in love with the city. Of all the places she visits in China, Tianjin is the first one where she finds that things are similar to her hometown. She decides to stay. This exotic district is the former Italian concession. Visitors feel as though they are roaming the streets of a foreign land. Sunrise and sunset and everything else along the street are always enchanting. Who transplants this Italian-style town to Tianjin? In 1902, Lieutenant Ferrantillo arrives in Tianjin with the Italian army. he proactively assumes responsibility for planning a concession. The terrain of this concession is lower than any other, so its construction requires a great deal of money. Without planning experience or sufficient capital, Ferrantino decides to try attracting investment. He does this by substantially reducing the land prices and building taxes. This stimulates a mini construction boom. This film clip shows the changes in the Italian concession over 30 years. On either side of the checkerboard street are various Italian building styles of all periods. Roman arches, domes, towers, well-proportioned turrets, courtyards, villas, and marble pillars fill this authentic Mediterranean architectural space. It's as if a beautiful Italian town is picked up and gently placed in Tianjin by an invisible hand. The European-style exteriors and traditional Chinese engravings form the most distinctive aspects of the Italian concession. This building is a combination of architectural styles and remains intact after a century. To this day, this place still features its original appearance and charm. The unique development and management mode of Ferrantino triggers the earliest real estate boom in Tianjin. Another era of development is just around the corner. After a dozen years of planning, the extended British concession of 270 hectares is all set to be built by 1916. In today's 5 Avenues district, the 5 roads are like an invisible hand pressing down on the earth. One summer morning, Shang Bin starts his visit to the 5 Avenues district along with his friends. An elderly resident called Zhu Juan is their guide. Shang Bin is an art and design student from Nankai University. 3 years earlier, he visits the 5 Avenues district for the first time. He likes what he finds here. It's hard to imagine this peaceful and tranquil block was once a low-lying wetland a mere 100 years ago. Many changes happened over the years. "45 kilometers from the urban areas of Tianjin, a reclamation project is underway. This technology dates back 100 years in Tianjin. The old photos record scenes of a former reclamation project. Swampy areas are filled in to produce more land for construction in the concession areas. In 2013, researcher Wang Chang and his colleagues from the Tianjin Geology and Mining Research Institution conduct a soil survey on a construction site in the 5 Avenues area. The district is a former mudflat that's overgrown with weeds. It's unclear if the swamps are drained as part of the original reclamation. Wang Chan wants to find the answer.
据我们现在观察，地层上面都是建筑工程垃圾土，在这个2.5米的地层下边呢，就是当年吹的海河疏浚的那些个泥，来垫地的这个土。这个土里边呢，包括有碎木头块、有碎席子片， 还有化石的标本。这个厚度呢是2.2米到2.5米，那么加上上边垫的土呢，将近有4米多的厚度。那么现在我们看到的五大道，就是在当年垫了4米多地基土的基础上建设起来的。
The Five Avenues district represents the pinnacle of construction in the concessions. This high school is believed to have been designed by a man called Anderson, a graduate from the University of Edinburgh. Today, experts find it hard to locate any pictures or information about him. But the traces he leaves during that age of imagination can still be seen here at the 2 high schools he designs. A place of sunshine, beauty, and comfort is the design concept for the Five Avenues district. To create better sunshine penetration for the residences, tradition is cast aside in the positioning of the blocks and the alignment of the roads. Extremely high standards are set for the European buildings, but the idea is to keep the cost of each building at about 3,000 silver taels. At that time, such a sum was enough to buy 15 courtyards in the old city area. To guarantee sufficient room in the residences, even the floor area of living rooms and the heights of other rooms are strictly regulated. Detailed plans for the gardens and green belts, including the varieties of trees and their locations, are drawn up. The elegance and exquisiteness of the Five Avenues district not only attract foreigners, but also prominent Chinese. This area becomes their first choice when looking for a place to live. It's a trend that worries the Westerners.
So at the British Municipal Council, there was a meeting, and one British man stood up, and he said, the foreign middle class cannot afford to live in Tianjin, in the British concession, with all of these wealthy Chinese people. So the interesting thing to keep in mind is that many of the foreigners in Tianjin felt very intimidated and very squeezed out by the large number of wealthy who were moving into the concessions.
Many residences of prominent officials and other eminent people are now the homes of modern celebrities. The exteriors of these buildings are recorded by volunteers of Memory of Tianjin. The interiors may have a different world inside them. Marshal Zhang Shuliang's brother, Zhang Shuming, is the former owner of this residence. At that time, he's the director of the Tianjin Municipal Public Security Bureau. He lives here for more than 30 years. Gao Yongping participates in the restoration of this old residence. Like many other buildings in the district, the materials used are mostly imported. Something that catches his attention is the glazed doors of the living room.
这种提拉式门呢，很轻便。 密闭性还好。那上面有滑轮，这墙里边有一个配重啊，就跟咱们的电梯似的。这个门这个料呢也是菲律宾的，玻璃的都是一个是进口的玻璃。啊，这几门这6扇加2侧都是提拉门。哇，都是提拉的。它这种做法在这5大道也是独一份。
这是我第一次见。
对，
新颖的设计。
In addition to the pull-up doors, the design of the windows in the gatehouse is equally surprising.
太奇怪了，还是个三角。
里外都可以看见。
那就坐在这儿，你看嘛，拿镜子，哇，这个角度，你看所有的都能看到，在外边根本就看不出来。对，只有进到里边才知道。好像是咱看到所有这些个门房里边唯一的一个吧，还没看到第二个呢。这个太好了，不知道现在有没有人去借鉴这个。
The era when the Five Avenues district is constructed coincides with a golden age in the history of world architecture. Many milestone masterworks are created during this period. Prosperity and urbanization brings forth a boundless creative space for architects. In 1922, As Austrian architect Rolf Gehling arrives in Tianjin, the city is part of a carnival of architectural design. In 2005, 79-year-old Francis Gehling returns with his daughter to Tianjin after a long absence. More than 100 buildings in Tianjin were built by his father, of which 19 remain intact.
My father was a very hard worker. He would easily put in 12-hour days as a normal routine. He was known within the community as being very competent in developing new projects. They were telling me, 老爷的脑筋大.
Francis was born in Tianjin and remembers his father as always being exceptionally busy. Sometimes his dad designs 3 buildings at a time. Each and every design is inventive and original, but also integrates perfectly with the whole block. The tide of construction sweeping across the 5 Avenues district in those days offered a stage for Rolf Gehling to showcase his talent. Architects from various countries flocked to Tianjin, and buildings of many distinct styles were the result. The 5 Avenues district is filled with fresh vigor and vitality, and the city of Tianjin becomes a charming and poetic place. As time goes by, new owners move into the old residences. Zhu Chuyan was born in the 5 Avenues district. It's his home for more than 6 decades. Now retired, Zhu devotes himself to preserving and passing on the history of the 5 Avenues district.
我留恋这个地方，因为我这一出生在这儿，我对这个地方有感情，所以把我所知道的告诉他，更多的人知道这大道，这是我由衷的愿望。
The internet helps Xiangbin and Zhu Juyan establish a connection. It's Xiangbin's wish to hold an art show themed on the 5 Avenues district. His teacher and classmates also participate in his fact-finding tours. The 2,000 or more buildings in the district are in good condition. These old buildings witness many changes in this area over the years and contain numerous stories. Xiangbin and his classmates feel both the hardships and the stateliness of the city. They record its past glories and honor with paintbrush and pen. The feelings within are expressed in paintings. The trees and bushes, bricks and stones are converted into works of art depicting the 5 Avenues district.
北大道建筑给我带来感触的就是这种岁月感，我们都想通过我们自己的方式表现出来，让游客能看得到。北大道建筑不仅仅是它表面的这些建筑形式，也在于岁月带给它的这种痕迹，还有背后的这些故事，这些也是我们想表达的。
A century later, the 5 Avenues district still treasures its memories of the concessions. The owners of most of the old buildings are new, but the layout and charm of this block remains. Leisure, ease, and comfort are still expressions of this place. The 5 Avenues district, with its vivacious remnants, not only represents a bygone era, but also the promise of tomorrow. After years of effort, the website of the local history volunteer group, Memory of Tianjin, is finally available on the internet. Marilu continues telling visitors the stories of the links between Italy and Tianjin.
Oh, Tianjin!
Fang Bo is preparing a book about the International Bridge for publication. Zhu Zhuoyan continues to take visitors around the Five Avenues district and seeks to uncover more stories about this place. Han Zhengyang is busy with his work on the bridges. After 2 years of restoration, another bridge reopens after more than 30 years. An art show about the Five Avenues district opens after several months of preparation by a group of students. These bygone scenes reappear and memories become fresh and seem instantly alive. The unique charm of the city integrates fashion with tradition. This remarkable city seems forever dynamic, just as the river running through it. Tales of the destiny of each generation continue to unfold. These rich historic and cultural remnants meld with the memories of those who so lovingly nurture the beautiful city of Tianjin. She is the epitome of China for over 100 years. She is a city of hope and dreams.